All right, let's hit record on this computer.
All
Do you
right.
see it on your end?
Yep, I do.
All right, let's do this again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself. Welcome to the Stepping Out series, a podcast all about ordinary people just like you and me who have taken a step out in faith to their dreams, to their passion, to their calling, whatever you want to call it, despite the odds, despite the fears. I'm your host, Anna Gray, and my hope today is as you listen that you would be inspired and equipped to live life to the fullest. And today we get to speak to the incredible Tony. And true story, I forgot to hit record, so this is take 2. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much, man. I'm excited to be here. I think one of the best things about talking about stepping out is just that idea that, every journey starts with one step. And so I think it's brilliant that you're doing this podcast. It's amazing I'm just excited to hear the stories of people that are inspired to step out and where they can be in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. It's pretty exciting to see.
Me too, man. Looking forward to hearing your story. But before we start, let's do this again. Tony Arriola, where does that name come from?
Dude, yeah, that name is actually my dad. Yeah, my dad's family came from Mexico. And so the double R there kind of trips people up. They either think it's Arriola this or that, and then
I was like, Ari.
Yeah, it's kind of like this thing. So it's just Arriola. That's the way I say it. It's kind of like a pirate, starts with R and then Arriola.
Arriola.
So, yeah, man. I imagine you have the similar problem with your name. People are like, hi, this.
Okay, this is actually a true story. Like, people ask me, because they're like, what should I call you? I'm like, oh, you can call me Anna Gray, Anu Gray, Anna Gray. And they're like, yeah, but how do you actually say it? And I'm like, to be honest, I actually don't even know the answer. I actually really don't, because I grew up in a British school and they kind of said it one way. And then, and I'm like, call me Anu, call me Gray, whatever works for you. Same thing.
That's amazing.
So you're married, right?
Yes, I am married. Yes. Me and my wife, we been married almost 10 years now. So we got married super young. Like I was 19, she was 20. So we're like thinking back on that time, we're like, what were we doing? But we just really felt like, again, it was a stepping out of faith. We really believe we were called to be together, that we were, met in high school, had kind of the high school sweetheart thing. And then she decided to break my heart. I don't know what she was thinking. She was on a different program than me. Decided to do the whole, like my parents say I can't date and then go and date some other guy. So that was fun to navigate as a 16-year-old. I don't know if anybody was like that, but in high school, I wasn't even sure who I was. I was just like so insecure,
absolutely.
And so then that happened. And then after high school, we started talking and stuff. And then she realized the errors of her ways. That's probably one-sided of the story, but
I so hope she's in the other room listening to you. Be like, he loves telling this story, doesn't he? I bet you tell everyone that story.
Yeah, I do. I'm like, what? She broke my heart. It's an easy way to do it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. 10 years. 10 years. When's your anniversary?
Anniversary is January 12th. So that's going to be coming up here in a few months. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I could ask you so many questions about that. That would be a whole thing in itself. That's amazing. Like, what did people say when you decided to get married that young?
What's really funny about that is we had a few reactions. Either people were like, hey, that's cool for you. That's good for you. But I could almost imagine, because we were in a smaller church at the time, I could almost imagine just like the judgment. I could almost feel it, like from just the community people around you, like, oh, they're not old enough, all that kind of stuff. But we were both pretty old souls. We always just like thought about things very future minded.
Right.
We also were very similar in our convictions and like the way we saw life and the way we wanted to live it, even though we were only 19, 20. So we had certain people that weren't a big fan of it. But then we had other people who just were at complete support. So now 10 years later, I guess it's kind of like cool, like now we've stood a little bit of that early, like, oh, they're just going to break up early on, maybe, and the doubts and stuff. So,
this has still got a lot to do with, I still think this really goes with what the whole Stepping Out series is. It can also be in relationships, but how did you navigate in your own heart that, it's such an interesting situation to be in when you have people you love on both sides of the fence and you're going to disappoint someone.
Yeah. No.
How do you navigate with that?
I think you have to. This is the thing I've always run my life by is I have kind of my inner circle of people that like, hey, these people I trust their judgment, Maybe they're further along the journey than me. They're people that I'm like, I want my life to look like. And there's certain people that I'm like, those people, what they say carries a lot of work, a lot of weight. But there's certain people, even family members, like the people I go, you're not living a wise life. You know, you've been divorced, you know, one, two, you know, you've not actually lived through the things that you're trying to like be disappointed or not approve of me of. And I think one of the biggest things when we're stepping out, or even that, or even like career things or decisions we've made, is that we've gone, okay, we are going to disappoint some people, but I just want to make sure that my inner circle and the people that I like really, really treasure their opinion and their feedback, that I'm getting that feedback. And if I go against their feedback, those people are still going to love me no matter what. So that's kind of the way I try to navigate it, is I go, you know what? Hey, like, yeah, there's going to be people, maybe even family members, maybe people that really love me. They're going to hate or like not even understand because they don't see the vision. Because here's the problem is that we have the vision of something, if we're going to make a decision or if we're going to step out, we have this vision. Nobody else sees it though. So they just see this thing that just seems so insecure, so like it, like just not important and just so insignificant. And I guess that's the biggest thing, is I always have thought about, I have to stay true to the vision that's in my heart that I see ahead of me, and that what I could see things could be. And that's always kind of steered me right, is if I can, because at the end of the day, like, life's short, you know, and I just try to think about, you know, I just try to think about like, what do I want my legacy of my life to be? And that's kind of like a lot of what steers my day to day, or even my big decisions that I make, you know, and whether that's within business, whether that's within work, or whether that's relationships, even friendships, even geographically, like where I position myself. I think it steers everything. And that's where I think people can get lost, is they don't have that vision. Then it seems almost so much more scary, because you don't have that confidence in where you're going and the decision you're making.
Dude, I think that's so key, the two things that you said. It's so valuable. Like, number one, who are the people you're allowing to speak into your life, and allowing those voices to speak in, and also making sure, and to a big extent, like if it's relationships, making sure that they're further along than you. You know, like I'm still in a relationship right now, not engaged nor married, so I wouldn't want anyone to ask me for marriage advice. You know, it's just like, it's dumb. So I think
same way for me with kids, man. Like, I don't have any kids, so like I would hope nobody would be like, and I hope I wouldn't be giving people advice, because I'm like, I just not even been in that season, man.
Oh, and I think it's also like a sense of like carrying yourself with humility, hey? Like, where it's just like, totally, even if you were further along in your career, further along in your family life, you still carry with a sense of humility. But I love the second thing you said, and it's vision. And it's having vision for your life, which allows you to determine the decisions you make. Along that lines, I'd be curious to know, because it sounds like, you know, it was a big decision for you to marry Cami, right? How sure have you been of your vision since you were younger? Or did you find that it developed over time? And did you know what you wanted your life to look like?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's changed a lot. So when I've looked at, you know, there's certain seasons I felt so confident about certain things and so called to certain things, even coming from a faith background and going, you know, I'm called to do this. And, you know, which is great because it gives you purpose, again, gives you vision. And so I think when I look back at even my decision to get married young, or even like I've moved like geographically a few times, even left secure jobs in certain things, is that, you know, I just, that vision has always been my steering point though. Like, where in that moment I feel so sure about something, and it doesn't just come overnight or instant. It's not like this, you know, again, coming from that faith background, it's not like the voice of audible voice of God has come down and said like, this is the rest of your life.
That'd be awesome.
It would be amazing. I mean, that would be like the dream, right? It's like, wow,
Absolutely.
like this actually, like, okay, I don't need to question anything ever again. Although I still tend to debate that we probably would question even after, like, wait, did I really hear that? Yeah. But I think that's, when I look at that, I always run it through those few lenses. I try to run it through a wisdom lens, because that's one of the things I feel like God has given me from an early age. Even from a young age, I would just say things, and just like from high school, I would see past high school. Like a lot of people just saw high school, and I always, like at that age, I was like, no, I remember thinking, I don't want to date somebody unless I see myself marrying them. And I was just like, that's so extremist. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that's for everybody, but that was like where my mindset was. And so that future mindedness and the way that I was wired to just always be thinking about the future, I think that did help me like steer early on in my life, some of those decisions.
That's so good. You know, one of the key things that I've learned for myself when it comes to decisions in life, and you know, we were talking about, I wish I could hear the audible voice of God. And you know what I've realized? That there's so many people who are stuck because they're waiting for God to say something. But more often than not, I really believe that God calls us to have the mind of Christ, right? To have wisdom. And I always think of it in this way. It's like life is both fields and bridges. So God gives you a field and he says, have the mind of Christ, have wisdom and live out your life the best way you think it is according to my word. And then I think there's those small key moments in life which are less and they're bridges. And God says, go cross this bridge. And then you spend the rest of your life in the fields. So it's like fields, bridges, fields, bridges. But I think actually, you know, when it comes to stepping out, whether it's career, relationships, wherever it is, I think a lot of people, and even faith-based people, they're waiting to hear the audible voice of God for them to, like, God, I need a sign. God, I need a sign. But sometimes if it's wisdom and it's aligned with the vision that God put in your heart, it's amazing how much that can steer you in life.
Well, it's true. And I think even more so, too, I think people want to either hear the voice or they want to see how the season's going to end. Like, they want to see how everything's going to be completed before they make the decision or to step out. Like, okay, I want to see, like, is this going to work? Are people going to think I'm amazing? Or, like, they're going to, like, tear down my dream and hate me? They want to see how all of those things, like, play out before they make the decision to take a step out. They're like, oh, well, I want to start this music career. I want to start this, but like, I don't know if it's really going to work out. And like, they want to see the end of that, which is so hard because you just never will. And if you wait until it feels safe to do something like that, it's not going to happen because that's just not the way the world works. You're not going to see those things. Hindsight's always 20/20. So
Absolutely.
I totally agree though, man. I like when I think back on like big bridge moments, like you were just saying, like one of the biggest ones for me was I was working full time in church ministry. I did it for like almost, I think, 5 years. I was in full time. And there became a point where, you know, I was doing more things. I was pastoring a campus at the time and really feeling some of the like gifts God had given me for teaching and speaking and doing those things. And there reached a point where I was like having conflict with just the leadership there. It's like nothing sinful, but it's just conflict. And it became a point where I was like, you know, hey, what's going on? And they just said, hey, we just feel like your communication style is too positive. And I remember like that moment hit me, right? It's funny to hear outside of
Shame on you.
It's hilarious to hear, right? But it's like that was the moment where I remember that bridge moment for me when I was like, I have to. It was like my convictions and my vision of my life was like, no, I have to leave. Like it was not even like a decision of like, oh, I have to, like, I'm stepping out from a secure job. I'm stepping out from, like, my church I got saved in and the church that I literally been in for 10 years. Like, to leave that place, like, that took so much of stepping out, but it wasn't as hard because I knew the vision and the convictions I had in my life. Wow. And so that's something I always think about is when people are making decisions, like, and obviously if you have a faith background, it's like, I'm, like, making decisions because I feel like God's steering me. His word, there's wisdom in there. You're like running it through all those filters. And
right.
But I just would encourage people that you want to get your why, like why you wake up in the morning, why you want to do things. Do you want to impact people? Like, how do you want to change people's lives? Like, what do you want to do ultimately and be your legacy? And then work backwards and go, what convictions do I need to put in place to reach that, right? And so that's literally every big decision. And so we moved up to Los Angeles, like started complete from scratch, like social life, everything from zero.
Wow.
And so, and it just became a thing where now that I am so happy I made that decision because it actually enlarged my vision and enlarged my life, making that decision. And now that I'm not working in traditional ministry per se, like I'm just seeing like the ability to impact on a whole other level I didn't even think was possible. When I was just working that full-time job in the church. And there's nothing bad with working full-time in the church, but it was different for me and it opened my eyes. So I think that's what you have to be careful of though, is that your vision needs to be more of your why, right? It can't be like my vision is I'm going to make $1 million this year. It's like, I mean, I get like, you know, aggressive goal setting. I'm all fan of that stuff, but it's why you want to wake up and do stuff, you know, like why is that? And then you work those convictions of like how you're going to outwork that. So.
I love that, man. Yeah, I think I love what you were saying before, in particular when it came to, not knowing what's on the other side. And I think the short form for that, it's fear. And isn't it so funny when you make those big decisions? You're just like, I should have made this so much sooner.
Dude, I could not agree more with that, man. There's so many decisions in life. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so scared of that, and I can't believe it, man.
And it's also funny. It's just like, I think there's also this fear. Like I've encountered myself. I'm like, what are people going to think about me? But here's the funny thing. In life, people are actually thinking way less about you than you think. You're not that
That's
important.
so
You know
true.
what I mean?
That's like so true.
Yeah, 100%. Like I remember just before even starting, if we were talking in very recent context, before starting anything with YouTube, thinking, I'm like, oh, what are people going to think about me? And you know what? I had a lot of positive feedback. And at the end of the day, people actually weren't even thinking about me that much. So it's like, oh, what did I wait so long for?
Well, it's a sobering thought because it's one of those things where you're like always thinking, oh my gosh, everyone's like wondering where my content is. They're wondering when I'm going to do stuff. And it's like, I mean, maybe for those people that are like have the extreme, like they have a super fan base that's built and stuff. But it's like, especially if you're just starting out, like your family's not sitting there around dinner going like, you know what, like Tony didn't post a video today. And man,
really disappointed in him.
Yeah, we're disappointed. Like it just doesn't
Do
happen.
better.
It's funny because one of my bosses at my work, she was like talking about, she's working on this like RV trailer. She's renovating it.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
she's like, oh man, it's going so slow. And I feel like I kind of want to like be able to document the process and show people on Instagram like it's cool like makeover. And it was like she had that thought where she realized like, wait a second, like people aren't sitting there like waiting for me to go like, oh, when is this trailer going to be done? It's taking too long. Like no one's thinking that, like, especially the people around you. And I would even go one step further. If you're just trying to do stuff like building content on YouTube and stuff, I would even say like the people around you and your friends and family probably aren't your audience anyways.
It's true.
They probably aren't. And so we spend so much time worrying about what their opinions and what the way they see it. And it's like, and it's a fear-based thing, but you have to almost, the unlock for me was realizing like these people aren't even my audience anyways. Like when I was starting to do YouTube stuff, I was like, oh man, people are going to think I'm like, people are just going to think I'm weird. People are going to be like, what is he doing this? He's like out here making these videos about, at the time we were making travel videos and stuff. And it was like the San Diego Zoo. Why is he doing a tips video on the San Diego Zoo? And then we ended up like getting 20,000+ views on this video because we just made one. And like, that was our audience. Like think about 20,000 people versus like the 8 to 10 people I was worrying about, like in their opinion, And so, man, it's fear though. It is fear. And it's, you don't see the other side of it until you look back at it. You know what I'm saying? After you make that step.
That's awesome. So let's talk practically about that. In your life, can you tell the people watching, what do you do for work and what are the areas in your life you feel like you've stepped out into?
Totally. So what I do for work is I work for a company called Think Media. And so we're like a YouTube
awesome.
channel that teaches like people how to like use their cameras, like how to use stuff, how to get more results on YouTube in general. And like the big picture really of our vision is to help 10,000 people create a full-time living doing what they love online. And so that's kind of like our big vision and kind of the why we wake up in the morning. We want to see people like be able to work and live life on their own terms. And so I came into that from stepping out and like it was a step out moment to even come into this position that I've been working at for about a year now, is the idea that I started making videos on YouTube like a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. Me and my wife were just making videos and we were trying to learn how it worked and learning how to like, okay, how do we get views on videos? Like how could we make a living off this stuff? And we came across Think Media stuff. So I came across it as a student first. And saw it start to work for our channel a little bit, like get some traction, get views, get some things and implement the strategies. Well, one of the things that I did to step out was I saw that the Think Media was having an event in Los Angeles, like a free event. And I just messaged them and was like, hey, do you guys need help? Do you need volunteers? I'd love to volunteer and help you guys out. You guys have helped me out. And lo and behold, that one stepping out of like just DMing and asking somebody, right, led to volunteering there with them and like the small team. Again, you picture these things are so much bigger than they are when it's foreign to you. And I was just like there with 3 or 4 people and we were like helping set up chairs, like do the ordinary stuff, like setting up chairs, helping them, sell, make sure be at the book table, selling books. And what happened was that led to a dinner, with everyone of the team there. Really like jived with them. They really liked me. Led to a phone call. Hey, do you want to like start interning for us maybe? And then that just grew
so
so
good.
quick, right? That grew so quick to now I'm producing all of the YouTube videos that go out on all of our channels, like making sure like I'm optimizing them so that like the titles, like the script, like all that stuff. And then even producing our podcast that we do every week. So it's kind of like it all turned into like started as just a small seed of stepping out on YouTube. Then they recognized me. I asked to volunteer just to put myself out there as a step. Again, I could have been really embarrassed. I mean, like, oh no, you don't need volunteers. Like, that's kind of weird. That was a very like, again, it was kind of just a stepping out. And everything in my life, I'm telling you right now, everything in my life, obviously you can credit to God and his leadership and his vision in my life, but it's also been in a direct relation of obedience of stepping out and actually getting over myself. Because really when I boiled down fear to me, like fear is actually my pride in the way. Like more than it's like, oh, like I'm afraid and I'm scared. It was like the idea that, I was the most important player in my life is like that's kind of like where it rooted for me. And it might be different for other people, but I just knew like if I can go, hey, I just want to be I just want to help people. That has always led to every amazing opportunity in my life.
So true. Very, very good. 100%. I think even when it comes to any speaking opportunities people might have in their life, right? I remember one incredible leader saying, it's like, do you ever feel nervous when you go and talk to all these people? They're just like, no, because I'm not even thinking about myself. I'm thinking about how to help them.
Exactly.
And I think that's just it, in life.
No, it is. It's like, it's understanding that, one of the biggest problems people have with even just content creation in general is they create selfish content. It's like, I want to vlog my life. So like people are going to come watch me because it's my life and they should be interested about me, which again, there's nothing wrong with vlogging necessarily, but I'm just saying like, that's the mentality people come into with content creation is like, it's about me. And and it's very selfish based content instead of going like, hey, I want to actually help people and bring value to their life, like true value, like that in itself creates momentum and growth that's insane because again, you're being generous. And as you're more generous, like your world gets larger, your influence gets larger because you're giving out. Like it's always that myth, right? You think like if I hoard it all to myself and keep it all about me, I'll be safe. But it's actually the opposite, especially like coming from a faith background in the kingdom of God. It's like as you give, like you're going to be refreshed. Like you're going to be like, there's so many things that have just proven time and time again. And even if you aren't in a faith background, it's like the idea of sowing and reaping is like,
absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? Like what you sow, you're going to reap. That's just like a universal law. Like if you sow negative into your life, you're going to reap a lot of negative. Like if you sow generosity, you're going to reap generosity. And it's just a timeless, it's a timeless principle that happens. And so I totally could not agree with you more is that the idea that like, if you give more, like your world's going to get larger, your influence is going to get larger because people are going to be thankful. Like people are just thankful. Like they're thankful that you helped them. Like I spent hours researching something and I made a video about it. You're like, you just saved me 4 hours of research. Like
it's so
that's amazing. Like, so man, I couldn't agree more. It's about being generous.
Yeah, I think, and even when you think about, if we were to think about what is the antidote to fear, right? I do think that one of the key antidotes to fear is genuinely thinking less about yourself, right?
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Like it's because fear again it's almost like you go into this primal instinct of my fear is to protect me. Like I'm afraid of something because it might hurt me. Like that's ultimately like when it comes down to it, right? It's like I'm afraid whether emotionally, physically, like even thinking back to just like really, really like old historical times, like my fear and like those things exist to actually see my survival go. And so it's like the fear is very much selfish based. It's like, I want to protect myself. I want to survive. And again, it's almost like fear should be a thing on a dashboard. It's like, I'm fearful of something. Oh, what's going on then? Why am I afraid of something? Because hey, there might be a genuine reason to be afraid of something, whether that's maybe it's someone in a domestic abuse place, like, yeah, you have like reason to be afraid and you should use that fear to run. Like, but when it comes to like stepping out in life and those things, yeah, those fears are there, but it's about asking, why is that fear there? Is it because like I'm trying to protect myself? Which I would argue is most of the time the case. If you really deeply go down is like, it's about protecting myself, or is there a real present danger there? I guess like a comical example could be someone's in the witness protection program. I guess they don't want to be like putting out stuff and like saying their name. They have maybe a reason to fear, but I'm just trying to think of an actual realistic one of like a normal person. There really isn't. The fear is really an illusion.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to that. So you DM'd the Think Media team.
Yep.
If you can remember, I'd love to hear this. In that moment when you were texting them or DMing them, like what was going through your mind?
Honestly, my mind was this. So I went. My brain went a couple of ways. I was going, okay, I'm gonna DM them and see if they need help, and I almost assumed they wouldn't get back to me because I was like, I was just like, like they get tons of messages and this is probably like, no, we got this taken care of. We're good. So I almost just felt like it's kind of a Hail Mary more than anything. So I didn't even put like an emotional buy-in on it at all. So I was kind of like, good. Okay, cool. And then they responded like, yeah, we'd love for you to help. Come meet us here and do this. And I was like, amazing. So I was like really stoked on it. Because for me, it really came from a mindset of, I was not trying to get a job. I was literally like, just, hey, thank you. This is awesome. Like what you guys are doing, I just really appreciate it. And so I want to just help out. And that was literally my frame of mind and my posture. Like it was legitimately to just give and I didn't expect anything in return. And then they paid for my dinner. I was like, that's the best return ever. I didn't expect anything. Like you paid for my dinner, like taking me out to dinner. That's amazing. Like I get to hang out with you guys. That's so cool. And what really was like got crazy is when Sean DM'd me, the CEO of our company. He DM'd me on Instagram like a week or two later and said, hey, can I get on a call with you? And I was like, that's when my mind started going a million miles a second. So I'm like, what would you want to call me about? I'm like, would it be a job?
This guy has like 2 million YouTube subscribers.
It's insane. Yeah. It's like across his channels, he got probably like 2 million almost. Yeah. It's like he is like the YouTube guy. Like, I mean, you can like, you search, you'll see his face when you look at best camera for YouTube or this or that, like anything, those things, he's just kind of owns those brands and those keywords. And at my time, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, I mean, I'm just kind of like humbled. I'm like, and then again, I was just kind of like tapering my expectations. I'm like, oh, he probably just wants to thank me. Or like, I was talking to one of my friends and I thought this would be really funny if this actually happened. I was talking to my friends and I said, and he's like, yeah, I mean, he's like, I don't think this would happen. But he's like, what if he's like, hey, can I get on a call with you? And it's like, yeah, sure. And then I get on a call and he's like, hey, I just want to tell you about our new product, man. We want to sell.
Stop it.
Like my friend was just like, it would be really funny if that happened. I would be like
some marketing call.
Yeah, like some marketing ploy. Like, so I just was like kind of tapering my expectations. And then it pretty much came to that conversation me and him had. And he was like, hey man, I really like your stuff on YouTube, which I was kind of shocked at because I didn't have a lot of subscribers. I was just like putting out consistent videos and just like grinding and just doing stuff and putting myself out there. And he's like, we love your YouTube videos. You got some great skills and, love your heart, love the way you came and served. You contributed so much to our team in that event and how to run the live event, which honestly I learned from like just doing church, right? It's like how to run like weekend services and like make sure atmosphere's there. All that stuff which just came from church,
Oh, absolutely.
And so they were just like stoked. And when that call came and he's like, hey, we'd love to have you intern at first, which again was another stepping out because
100%.
At that season of my life, so I had just come out of that church background I talked about earlier. And I was like a bit shell shocked for like a year and a half, just like trying to figure out where's my next step in life. Like, because you come out of that and it's almost like you feel like it's a God calling. And then you step out into something new that you don't really even know is fully there. So I'm like trying different things. Me and my wife did like web design for a little bit. And I was like, no, I don't feel like that's it. We just tried stuff for like a year and a half. And then we kind of landed on YouTube and we're like, this is kind of like, I've done video for like 10 plus years. I've always loved it and always felt like I just came naturally to me, a lot of that stuff. And so it just kind of all the stars aligned. Again, there's some things in life where I stepped out and I'm like, I knew the vision and I knew the decision. I knew the step out moment. For that one, it was like, I knew the step out into the season, but out of that kind of wandering season of a year and a half and not knowing what's next, dude, I was just like, the stepping out was like every day. It was like, what am I doing with my life? You know what I'm saying? And so when that came along, I was just, everything aligned and became clear. And then that step at that moment, when I stepped out, it just, everything made sense. And when he offered me that job, literally I looked back at the last year and a half, like even some of the stuff I tried, like I was doing, website design, and then I was actually competing in like high level, like video games and stuff. So I was like almost like semi-pro in a game. And I was like really, really like all that stuff, all the skills that I was like developing in that year and a half and trying stuff, like almost every season I've looked back is like now I'm using in my job. So like I was doing live streaming with competing in video games, right? Well, now like a good chunk of my job, I live stream every week. So it's like that stuff that I had to learn even in that season that it feels useless when you look back at it because you're like, oh, I guess it just didn't work out. No, it was something that was being used the whole time. And so when I stepped out, I was nervous though, man, because almost really early in that job, they were like, hey, we want to fly you out to Vegas with our team because most of our team's in Vegas. And they're like, hey, let's fly you out and let's do like a shoot day. And I'm like, dude, all these guys, like, I don't know what I'm doing, man. I'm like, dude, I'm just some guy who just started doing YouTube. I mean, like, these guys have been doing it for years. And it was cool because, you know, in that season, I went up there and shot with the guys and did stuff. They were just so welcoming, so amazing. Wow. And it was, again, that breakdown of the fear seemed a lot bigger than what it was. And these guys were just like amazing. Like everyone that I went up there and worked with, they were just all amazing people of God, like people of great character, did everything to make me feel comfortable and excited to be working with them. And so now, yeah, man, it's been almost a year. Like it feels like, well, I mean, it's been a little under a year, but it's just felt like this kind of like crazy slingshot thing that happened. But it all became because those little tiny days of stepping out, right? Stepping out, leaving that church ministry job, which seemed insane to a lot of people. People around me were like, you're crazy. Like,
right.
And then stepping out and going like, I'm stepping into something. I don't have a job. I don't have a clear vision. It was like the first time in my life, legit, I didn't have a super clear vision.
Wow.
Like, and that was rough because I'm so, again, I talked about I was future minded, right?
So what do you felt like oriented you during that time? Like, yeah.
No, that's one of the things I think why I'm glad I went through this season because I feel like I have a lot more empathy because I've always been future minded and I'm like, just get future mind, just get vision, right? And it's like, just seems black and white to me. But then you go through a season like that where it's really hard for you to have vision and to pull you through. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, shoot, I see why people can have a hard time doing this now. Like where I always just felt so clear and like maybe even a little bit, I don't want to say arrogant, but just so blind, I guess, to the idea of like, no, you just get vision. Like you just make a decision. And I think for me, it became, again, reshaping my why. Wow. Like sometimes, you know, you might have a life mission and a life why, but it's almost like I couldn't get too romantic in that why and going like and putting more practical things on that why. That's what I think I was starting to do. I was like, well, I was like, my future looks like I want to be a pastor that speaks on Sundays and leads a church. And it became more of like, that's a role
like
more
a what?
than a why.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that's, I think ultimately when that season hit in that 2 years and like my wife was amazing in that 1.5 2 year season because she was just like giving me space and time to figure that out. Cause I was just like, I've literally dedicated, 8 to 10 years to this and then to have it just end. So I guess my biggest thing in that season was trying stuff, like you were saying earlier.
That's good.
What you were saying earlier, I think really resonated with me was when you said like a lot of us wait for the voice of God or you wait to hear that big clear direction, right? And sometimes stepping out is like, I'm going to just start doing things and like, okay.
So good.
Like, and especially again, from a faith background, I was like trying stuff. I was like, all right, God, like, I feel like you're kind of in this, like even the gaming stuff, right? This seems so trivial, might seem trivial to someone who's listening right now. I was like, what? Video games? This guy's a loser. But it was like, literally I was in teams of people competing that we would play with together every day. And when I went to say like, hey guys, I'm not going to play anymore. I had messages from each one of my teammates going, man, you set an example for what it looked like to be a person like who didn't like, you were different. I look up to be a leader like you. All these people started DMing me because again, like those seasons, those things that I again was so lost and felt like I didn't know where I was going next, but my convictions always stayed the same.
Right.
So like even when you don't feel like you have a vision, like if you have some of those convictions in place and going like, and for me that was like, hey, I'm going to be in church. Hey, I'm going to be like someone who's following and pursuing God, even when it was hard in that time. Like I look at that time and I'm like, man, it was hard, dude. Like it was hard to be like, oh, like I'm going to read my Bible or I'm going to do this stuff. Like it was just, for me, like in my spiritual journey, it was just hard. And I guess that's the big thing is that some people like to camp in the valley of death. It talks about, walk through the valley of death. People like to camp there. I think the important thing is to keep walking through it. Like you got to walk through the valley of shadow of death. Like you have to keep walking and just try things because you might ultimately not hear the voice of God or might not hear your ultimate, calling or your vision in your life. But then what happens is you start trying stuff and then the vision almost unfolds before you, right?
It's so true. I think one of the worst things you could do in life is just sit, just stand still. I think there's a certain power in walking. Like one example that I often give to people when they're like, I'm not really sure what to do with my life, and they're like, I want this and this, but it's not happening like this. And it's so true. Sometimes in life we can be like, I want this job title with this income in this location with this level of influence, whatever. And I just think sometimes in life, it's kind of like we need to see life more as a compass, where it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to go northeast, and you just keep walking that way, and just trust that as you're walking to that general vicinity, that your steps will be aligned along the way. Otherwise, it's almost like a paralysis. If you're like, I need to know the exact location I'm going.
It is. That's exactly what you just said. Paralysis is the perfect word for that, because you do become paralyzed in the fact that, oh, I need to know these things. I need to know it paralyzes you. And when you walk, there's a power in you walk and you get motion. You start getting traction. You start getting momentum. No, I think the hard thing is, on the flip side of the coin, if you're walking in the wrong direction completely, that may be something you might want to look at. It's like, I want to go northeast, but you're like walking southwest. It's like, hey man, and I hope again, that's where it comes back to people in your life that hopefully can speak into you and go like, hey man, you're walking in the total opposite direction. One of my closest friends through that season was a guy named Luke Crowley, and he's one of our pastors here in Hillsong, LA, and where I go to church now. And he just was like, he never looked at me different. And he only really knew me when I moved to Los Angeles. So I didn't really have a job. On paper, I looked like a failure. I just didn't have a job. I didn't have direction, but he just never saw me that way. And that was one of those people in my inner circle that was just like, we'd get coffee every week and just be like, he would never look down on me. He just would oh man, he just believed in me, always spoke life into my visions and my dreams, no matter what season it was in, whether it was the web design, whether it was, playing games, whether now it's in YouTube and doing what I'm doing now. And that's just so critical to have those inner circle people speaking into your life in those seasons, especially because sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been this way, but I feel like that season I didn't really even have a compass, man. I was like, I just feel like I'm kind of what's right in front of me? I don't even it was hard. But then those people kept those convictions that I have. They reminded me of them. They're like, oh no, remember, this is who you are. And that just helped so much, man, because the big thing that what you were saying earlier is that, when we make those visions so particular, I'm going to have this income, this job, this, that. What ends up happening, and what I even did, you start to tie your identity to it. So if you don't have it, you're equal to worthless. Right. And that's so dangerous, because I think that's even such a great breeding ground for mental health issues, because you're just constantly feeling a failure, all those things. And again, I'm a fan of big goals. I get it. I'm very future minded too, but there's something about a difference between a goal and I'm a failure if I don't achieve that goal exactly how I see it.
I think it's true. Sometimes you can actually become a slave to your vision.
Oh my gosh, that's the quote, man, right there. That's the quote of the entire podcast, bro. Literally, yeah, 100%.
There's a sense of I think when I've had vision for my life, it's kind of you get the vision, you glance at it, and now go back to your day to day. You keep it. Agree. But I think when you can almost turn your vision into a god of itself. And it's such an interesting kind of balance to keep in life, that I am going to allow the vision to orient me, but it's not I'm going to let it rule me to some extent. Yeah.
No, it's so true, man. It's when you become, because the thing that's so funny is we think a vision or the life that I want to live is freedom. But the moment you make that either that or bust and everything is invested in that, it's kind of like the timeless thing that I've seen memes of this before, where it's I wanted to be an entrepreneur or do my own thing because, I don't want to work as much as when I'm working at, my 40-hour week of job, or where I used to work was Pizza Hut. It was I don't want to work pizza for 40 hours. This is annoying. So I want to work less hours on my dream. And it was no, it's actually a lot of times that dream becomes more hours because, you are so sold out and bought into it.
Absolutely.
And again, there's nothing wrong with seasons of that. I think there's seasons to be I'm going to do everything I can and work every spare hour to make this dream work and take it and push it off the ground. Because a lot of times it requires that. But I think that where it gets hard is when people get in that season and they never leave it. It's just that, and it becomes again fear based. Oh, I have to keep working this much, or else I'm not going to be successful. Or like I have to achieve this vision, or I'm just a failure. And a lot of us are holding on to even like old voices of old teachers or like parents, like that whole idea of like you're a failure and those voices, right? And you're almost like responding in fear. And even though it's a positive outcome per se, it's still not a healthy positive, if that makes sense. Like I think there's a difference between having success, but then having success without losing your soul. And like
absolutely.
having success that's actually healthy, like from your in to your out, like it's actually going to be sustainable. It's not something that's just like, either a firework or a viral video. It's like, whoa, it's one thing and it's just gone, And I think that's the biggest vision I think about with my life is I want to really change people's lives. And I know it sounds really generic, but like I want them to actually go, hey, because the content you guys produce or you did is like my life completely changed. Wow. And now I'm able to accomplish you've liberated me to be able to follow my dreams and to have success without losing your soul. And that is and we are Think Media at large is a Christian company. Like most of the people work here are Christians, and like we very much keep that at the forefront of our mind. We want to serve and love people, and we want to build God's kingdom, like Beautiful. Through YouTube, and that's just. And again, when I think about all the conversations even we've had today, is like getting that why is so important.
Absolutely. Because
like it stems everything. It stems your health. It stems your longevity. It stems, like how you actually orchestrate yourself day to day. Because if your why is just to get to the end goal as quick as possible, like that's a recipe to actually be destructive in your life. Because you're like, I will forsake everything. Like we know like so many people like CEOs, like even big CEOs are big people that we go, man, this guy's a success, but yet their personal life is just a mess, they don't know how to actually keep a family together. Like they can't, have healthy relationship with their kids, or they can't have ultimate satisfaction. And what's sad is even more so, like some people even choose to end their life because it's just like even though they have this success, it's like they got everything they ever wanted, but they realized it wasn't enough, And so that's kind of like what gets me up and gets me fired up is like, how can we provide people with a way to live life that's success, but they don't forsake their soul, and they're able to have healthy success.
I think that was really well said. Yeah, I think that's so true when it comes to knowing your why and it's sustaining you. Because I think there's a sense where it's funny, like it's a small example, but one of my friends just bought a new laptop and he spent ages researching it. And then, so he's super excited, orders it, researches it, it arrives, and he's just like, meh. You know what I mean? And that whole kind of like, you realize that there's this selfish human nature part of us that like always wants more, that is truly never satisfied. And if we're always going after the what or after some sort of like number, it's going to be funny the day you arrive there and get what you want, you realize it's actually not enough. That position is just like, it's still not good for your soul. But I think living your life with the why, that really sustains you as a person.
And I think even one step further too is like the why being bigger than yourself. Like,
oh yeah.
Like you probably can agree to that too. It's just the idea of like, I wanted to help other people. Like if it's all the why is with me, it's like, oh, I want to become this person. So I'm just seen this way and I have this reputation and I have this following and I have this and I like the more in your like why you have I in there, it's just a dangerous recipe because
absolutely
you're just not, you're not like, I hate to say this, but like, I'm just not that big of a deal. Like you're just not that big of a deal. Like even the most like famous people, it's like, they're just people, and that's what I think about when I think about why is like, man, minus the I out of it as much as possible, maybe to start the sentence, but then it's all about how I can help other people and see them, succeed and flourish. And I think
Beautiful.
That's ultimately why you get satisfaction with that kind of why.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to start wrapping up here. I thought we were going to do 20 minutes. We went way over. It's all good. But I think just from your story, just for like a little summary of what I think I even just learned from you is if it's a dark season and you don't know what you want to do with your life, figure out, I think it's true, just figure out who you want to be. And it sounded like you had those convictions in place. And even when you were gaming, there seemed to be a sense about you where you still wanted to help people and bless people. And like even thinking about how did you get the gig with Think Media, you didn't say, hey, I want a job with you guys. Like you were just like, hey, how can I help you? And I remember listening to another person on YouTube talking about musicians and artists rather than reaching out to people who would normally put music onto like TV shows and whatnot, rather than saying, hey, like, here's my song. You should use it in your TV show. Rather, it's kind of like, hey, how can I serve you? What kind of music do you currently need? How can I help provide you with what you need at this moment? And coming with that serving mindset, I think that in itself just opens up doors for you. And
it does. I always think about, I'm not sure if you know who Danny Trejo is, but no. He's an actor, and he's famous for Machete. He's like this big like Hispanic guy. He's just amazing. He's like one of my favorite actors. He's awesome. And he came from a background of, being in drugs and arrested in jail and in and out, and really like bad background. But he ended up coming now to be just this amazing successful actor. And one of the things, he was interviewed recently, and he said like, he got an article here in LA that because he saved somebody, like he was like, what the celebrity like saved someone from like, it was either fire or their cars like on fire, and then he's like, he got him out of there or whatever. And he was being interviewed, and he goes, everything in my life that I've gotten success wise is from doing things for other people. Wow. Like that's literally what he said. And I mean, his life is so much in a better place than when he started off, but it was just that line always stuck out to me when I saw the interview. Wow. I was like, that's just so true. Like everything good in my life personally too, it came from giving to other people.
Beautiful.
It never came from a selfish motivation.
Beautiful. And I think the second thing that I learned from your story is it never hurts to knock on a door. Ever. You just like you said, you weren't emotionally invested into hearing back from them, but you just was like, knock on the door, let's see what happens.
Dude, it's so true, man. Like
it's so true. I've seen my personal life flourish in many ways just because I was like, well, let's just see what happens. Let's knock on the door. Let's see what happens. Worst comes to worst, they won't reply. Like really, what's the worst that can happen, right? When you knock on a door.
The worst thing that can happen is you're in the same situation you are now. Like
exactly.
So yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. And I think even the knocking on the door thing too is like, and it's like knocking on a door, but just like you said earlier, like providing value for them. Like imagine someone knocked at your door and had a full cooked dinner for you around 5 p.m.
Oh, you'd want them in your house immediately.
You're like, yes, who are you? Please come in here. Like it's like knocking on the door and like it just instantly giving value with going, hey. It's not like, oh, hey, it's like people have this mentality like, I'm going to knock on the door. Hey, can you make me dinner? Is that cool? It's like, who are you? And get away from me. Like, and it's just asking something right away from somebody that you don't even know. It's like just knocking on a door and going, hey, here's value. And I'll walk away now. And if you want, there's my number. You can call me, if you want, they can wait to get a hold of you. But man, that's so true though. It never hurts to knock on a door.
All right. So as we wrap up, what are 3 things or like 3 tips you'd say to someone who's kind of scared to pursue their dreams?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that really evaluate that fear. So evaluate where it's coming from and why you have it. Is it out of that selfish motivation? So I'd evaluate, is it trying to protect myself? Or is it legitimate? Like, hey, I could actually be harmed. And so those obviously are 2 different things, but see where it's coming from. That's what I would say the first thing. The second thing I would say though is, your fear is this big thing. Try what you want to do on a small scale.
That's so good. That's so good.
You know what I'm saying? Like let's just, cause I'm from YouTube. So let's just use YouTube as an example. Like, I want to make a YouTube video. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to like do all this stuff, like, and make this thing. Start by making like an Instagram story. Like, just start by like, okay, the story disappears in 24 hours on Instagram. It's like, just try something on there first, or like try something on a smaller scale. If you're really, really like fear is paralyzing you, there's something about taking a small action and getting a small win, right?
Very good. Very good.
And so I would say that would be the second thing. And then the third thing I would do is just make sure the people around you, like if you're starting to feel like fearful of something or not wanting to do something, like vocalize that out loud to people around you, because I'm guaranteeing you like half the time when you actually vocalize it outside of your own like head, in your own headspace, you're going to be like, this is not that big of a deal. Like, wait, what? You know, and if you have a good friend or good friends in your corner, you know, it might be, you know, the main one I can see is that people are like, I'm just afraid of what people are going to think that I know if I'm going to do something, whether that's, you know, create content, whether that's going to be, you know, I'm going to try a new career path, you know, and those people are kind of like really afraid of that. Well, when you start vocalizing it to a true friend who loves you and like champions you, they're going to be like, who cares about them? Like, I'm here to support you. Like, I'm here for you. Like, and I guess that's the big thing is getting those right people around you. And so, you know, I'm not ignorant to say that if you don't have that right now, it takes time. Like, and it's just, and it takes a conviction to go, I'm going to have people around me in my life that are going to speak life and that are going to be the people in my corner. And so I would just encourage you to constantly be investing in that. And yeah, that would be my third thing, man. Getting community and people around you that can fan the flame of what you want to do.
Beautiful. Tony, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Such valuable insight. I actually really loved hearing your story. And if people wanted to find out more about you, what links could we give them?
Yeah, so you look at my name on Instagram. It's Tony Arriola. So that's, you know, for the audio listeners, that's Tony and then ARRIOLA_. So that's kind of where I'm at on Instagram. And you can just check out our YouTube channel, Think Media. So if you just search Think Media, that's where we're kind of at. And that's the world and the ecosystem I live in and where I work. And especially if you're trying to start something out, we just do tons of content about, you know, how to start. I mean, we do very beginner videos for people. Like, you've never touched a camera in your life. You've never, you know, you've never dreamed of doing something like this in your life. That's kind of where we come in. That's where we love to specialize as people that just get started. So check out Think Media on YouTube and you'll get a lot of great free value.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for everyone else who just joined in today. Appreciate it and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye.